This week we're in Dayton, Ohio to check out two very different video game stores. First up is Vacuums and Video Games. Yes, you heard me, it's vacuums and video games. It's a video game store and a vacuum store. Don't believe me? Well, you could just be browsing your favorite video games and then suddenly vacuum belts. No, you're not having a stroke. This is just how the store is. It's not a gimmick at all. But in all honesty, the vacuum side is much smaller than the actual video game side, which is less a store and closer to like browsing a museum, since I'm pretty sure that 80% of this store is behind glass. And with how the owner treats his stuff, I can kinda see why. Everything is immaculately clean and displayed. It's really something to behold. Like, check out this gorgeous NES display with a like-new Rob as the centerpiece. It's as close as I've seen to browsing this stuff as when it was actually brand new. The owner has a selection of games and consoles for nearly every generation that you can imagine, all organized in individual cases, complete with custom lighting. I know I can usually sound down on places like this that like to display their stuff behind glass, since it kind of makes the whole game hunting thing less fun when you're just staring at displays. But I can at least say that Vacuums and Video Games understands the concept of making all that stuff look incredibly attractive to the buyer. And there's very little here that would qualify as low or mid-tier stuff, as most of the games are incredibly collectible. Like this PlayStation case that has Haunting Ground and Rule of Rose right next to each other, two of the hardest to find PlayStation 2 games out there. They've even got a TurboGrafx and several games to check out. Just to give you an idea, we've been to several dozen video game stores all over the place, and this is still the most TurboGrafx stuff I've ever seen in one store. And down here I noticed some Evercase stuff, but had to do a double take because I literally couldn't believe that quite possibly the largest collection of N-Gage games that I've ever seen was sitting right in front of me. There wasn't this many games on display when the N-Gage was new. Really about the only thing the store is missing is a Neo Geo collection, which is probably a good thing since I would have just stopped breathing completely if I'd seen that. This is definitely a fun store to check out, if only to see what's on display here. And hey, if you've ever thought to yourself, man, I wish there was a store I could buy an incredibly rare video game and purchase a vacuum belt for my 1987 Hoover, well, Vacuums and Video Games is somehow the answer. Next up is Clarkade, which is just around the corner from Vacuums and Video Games, and right off the bat you know you're in for an experience with this giant Game Boy display staring at you. The owner said it's actually from an early 90s E3 or CES, but either way it's pretty dang awesome. But the main attraction to Clarkade is the full-size arcade that this place is housing. And this isn't a few arcade games that's sitting around for people to poke at. This is rows and rows of classic 80s and 90s arcade cabinets with an entire wall of pinball machines to boot. Personally, I love classic arcades. I love the look, I love the sound, and it's just something that you can't replicate with modern arcades. Clarkade is like taking a step back to the early 90s with this stuff. All the big games from the time are here and in mostly working condition. They even had stuff I'd never even seen in arcade, like this big honkin' time traveler cabinet. I've only seen pictures of this thing before, and I was actually surprised at just how good the hologram effect is. All of these are able to be played via hourly or all-day passes that are super affordable and well worth the time for this alone. But Clarkade is more than just an arcade, since this place is a giant clearinghouse for video games as well. It just goes on and on with the sheer amount of stuff that's in here. And unlike Vacuums and Video Games, this is definitely more like rummaging through a warehouse to find stuff, since there's just so much laying around. Like this case filled with awesome old 70s and 80s consoles sitting all the way back here in the corner of the store. They've even got the classic Pac-Man board game sitting back here as well. Oh, and there's also a Virtual Boy just sitting down here. If you're getting the feeling that there's a very loose sense of organization here, you're not too far off. Looking around Clarkade feels more like a treasure hunt than anything, but the stuff you can find is well worth your time. Like over here in the case, they've got this Resident Evil 7 Special Edition mansion, which is honestly cool enough on its own just because of how rare it is. But if you scoot around to the side over here, I bet you didn't expect to see that thing sitting there. The owner also has a full collection of old console demo stations as well, including this amazing Genesis display that I'd never actually even seen before. Also, this kid-sized Dreamcast demo station was neat because, honestly, there really weren't very many demo stations made for kids back then, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. And possibly the weirdest flex of all, there's a Wii U demo station sitting over here as well. And really, this is how you know that the owner of a store is insane. But yeah, there's just so much stuff in this place that it would take forever to go through it all. The owner's super nice and is really proud of everything he's got. He even took us outside to show us these custom dioramas that he made for the front of the store that I'd completely missed. Again, it just feels like there's so much jammed in here that you need to go through it like an archaeologist to discover it all. Definitely a completely different vibe than what vacuums and video games had going on. It's not bad, it's just a hell of a different experience. But with a nearly drained camera battery, I think we're going to have to cut our time exploring short. All of the info for each location will be in the description below, so if you're in the Dayton, Ohio area, these two stores are more than worth your time, especially the arcade inside Clarkade. That was just super cool to see. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with us in this video, and if you're into this stuff at all, please be sure to like and subscribe for future excursions into the unknown. As for us, we'll be heading out for some spooky adventures next time, so check back soon.